alone out here.
Lost Planet 3 comes out late this August. It returns to the frozen planet of EDN III, but it's set before the events of Lost Planets 1 and 2, and for the first time it's been given to an American development team instead of a Japanese one, they say, to take the franchise in a new direction. The old direction was shooting giant bugs in their glowing weak points with an emphasis on co-op and giant mech suits. The new direction is shooting giant bugs in their glowing weak points with an emphasis on story and character, as it follows new protagonist Jim Peyton working for Nevek, a corporation out to harness the planet's precious thermal energy resources. So says the game's producer, Andrew Szymanski.
At its core, Lost Planet is a game about shooting giant bugs, right? So we could either have made a game about shooting giant bugs that's about shooting giant bugs, or we could have made a game about shooting giant bugs that had something to say.
Nevek believes this can solve the energy crisis on Earth?
I believe it can.
There's something the old man's not telling us.
Given all the themes that we're dealing with here, you know, the themes of colonization and exploration and this frontier nature and sort of, you know, profit versus science. And I mean, there's a lot of ground to be covered there. And I think by incorporating those elements into a game about shooting bugs, you're creating an experience that has more depth than just simply going from point A to point B.
The giant mech suits are still in, and you'll use them to help explore the open world frozen wastes of EDN III.
Hey, Chief. Jim Peyton here. You copy?
Co-op, however, is gone, with multiplayer sectioned off into a separate suite, well away from the single-player story campaign. I asked Andrew if Capcom felt Lost Planet 3 developer Spark, a California-based studio, had a better handle on story and character than the original Japanese developers.
Definitely, in the case of Lost Planet, I think that the Japanese team provided a good foundation for sort of establishing some of the story aspects, you know, the snow pirates and Nevek and sort of the history of the planet. But then Spark and their writers, they really kind of took that ball and ran with it in terms of fleshing it out and making the characters feel like real human beings instead of just sort of these caricatures.
Let's release your rig. Be free!
With the game's new focus on character, the performances of its voice actors are important. So just as well, they might be the best thing about the game.
I'd love to say that I'm getting used to it, and that the cold is growing on me, but it ain't.
The performances and interactions between characters are unexpectedly natural. That's thanks to full performance capture, says the producer, and having actors record their performances all together.
All of the characters, including Jim that you see here, are based off of actual actors. So we scan their faces and map those to the characters. And then all of the actors in the studio, we got their facial performance, the full body performance, and the voiceover all in one session. So you see the performance that they gave in the studio when they speak their line, and that's much easier to do than trying to match everything up later. And that's one of the things that Spark brought to the table, is they had a lot of people who'd worked in film and television because they're based in Los Angeles, and so they brought a lot of that know-how to the process for that.
The character of Jim Peyton, a blue-collar labourer with a family to feed back on Earth, is also a step in the right direction away from the generic bald space marine.
We've tried to make Jim as much of an approachable, sort of personable guy as we can, and his interactions with the other crew members and everything. I really like it because it creates this atmosphere where you feel like these are real people. They're not just these generic stereotype, you know, buff soldier guys. I mean, you can actually envision all these people in a situation like that.
After the tepid reception for Lost Planet 2, the Lost Planet series needed a shot in the arm, especially to win back the interest of the Western audience. In its own way, says the producer, Lost Planet 3 is going after the same crowd that enjoys Mass Effect and Dead Space. So it's trying to please an audience with a taste for story, and so that's the new direction for the Lost Planet series.
You can't please everybody all the time, right? And as much as I would love that to be the case, this is not a game that everybody is going to love completely unconditionally. But again, ultimately, you know, I look at it and I say, hey, this is the kind of game I like to play. I know there are people out there that like this kind of game. We don't necessarily have, you know, the RPG or the dialogue choices that something like Mass Effect does, but I like to think that in terms of characterization, that we're close in making you care about these characters. And so I would love for people who are into that sort of science fiction and the intersection of you know, sort of the space exploration as well as the humanity of everything could come together and you know, really enjoy this game.
Lost Planet 3 comes out on August 27th in the US and August 30th in the UK.